Emily had always been drawn to the ocean. There was something about the endless horizon and the rhythmic lull of the waves that offered her a sense of peace. So when she stumbled upon the secluded beach on her weekend getaway, she thought she had found paradise. The beach was surrounded by jagged cliffs, accessible only by a narrow, winding path that seemed to deter most tourists. The first day was perfect. Emily spent hours basking in the sun, reading her favorite book and collecting seashells. As the sun began to set, she noticed something peculiar. A thick fog began to roll in from the sea, faster than she had ever seen before. It was almost as if the fog had a life of its own, creeping and curling along the sand until it swallowed the entire beach. Undeterred, she gathered her things and made her way back to her rented cottage. That night, she had strange dreams. She saw the beach in her mind's eye, but it was different. The serene landscape was replaced by shadowy figures lurking just beyond the water's edge. She woke up in a cold sweat, dismissing the dream as a byproduct of too much sun and wine. The next morning, Emily returned to the beach, eager to wash away the remnants of her unsettling dreams. The fog had lifted, and everything seemed normal. She set up her spot and began to relax. But a nagging feeling persisted. As she walked along the shore, she stumbled upon something half buried in the sand. It was an old, weathered journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. Curiosity piqued. Emily sat down and began to read. The journal belonged to a man named Thomas, who had visited the beach decades ago. His entries started off mundane, recounting his daily activities and love for the ocean, but as she read further, the tone shifted. Thomas wrote about the fog, describing it as alive and malevolent. He spoke of whispers carried by the wind and figures emerging from the mist. Emily's skin prickled as she read the final entry. They come with the fog. Beware the beach at night. Do not follow the whispers. Determined not to let the journal's eerie contents ruin her vacation, Emily tried to dismiss it as the ramblings of a man who had spent too much time alone. But as dusk approached, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The fog began to roll in again, just as swiftly as before. This time she stayed on the beach, her curiosity outweighing her fear. As the fog thickened, the air grew colder. Emily could barely see a few feet in front of her, but she heard something, a faint whisper, almost too soft to discern. Straining to listen, she caught fragments of words, but the language was unfamiliar. She felt a presence behind her and spun around, heart pounding. Through the dense fog, she saw them, shadowy figures, their forms indistinct but undeniably human. They seemed to glide over the sand, their movements slow and deliberate. Emily's instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. One of the figures reached out a hand, and she saw that it was not a hand at all, but a twisted, claw-like appendage. Panic surged through her, and she stumbled backward, falling into the wet sand. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but she couldn't understand the words. Summoning all her strength, she scrambled to her feet and fled toward the path. She didn't stop running until she was safely inside her cottage, the door locked tight behind her. Emily spent the night huddled in her bed, unable to sleep. The images of the shadowy figures haunted her every thought. The next morning she resolved to leave the beach and never look back. But as she packed her bags, she realized the journal was missing. It had been in her bag the night before. She was certain of it. Driven by a mixture of fear and a desperate need for answers, she returned to the beach one last time. The fog had not yet come in, but the air felt heavy with anticipation. She searched the area where she had found the journal, and there, half buried in the sand, it lay open. As she picked it up, a final entry caught her eye, written in a hurried scrawl. They are bound to the fog. Only the light can reveal their true nature. Emily's mind raced. She needed light, something powerful enough to pierce through the fog and expose whatever was hiding within it. She remembered her camera, equipped with a strong flash, and ran back to retrieve it. As night fell, Emily stood on the beach, camera in hand, heart racing. The fog rolled in, thicker than ever. The whispers began again, growing louder and more urgent. She could see the shadowy figures emerging from the mist, moving closer. She raised her camera and pressed the shutter. The flash illuminated the fog, revealing the true form of the figures. They were grotesque, twisted beings with hollow eyes and skeletal frames, their bodies dripping with seaweed and decay. The light seemed to repel them, and they shrank back, hissing in pain. But the fog was relentless, and more figures emerged, drawn by the light. Emily's camera flashed repeatedly, but the battery was draining fast. In a desperate bid to escape, she made her way toward the cliffs, the figures in pursuit. She climbed higher and higher, the fog thinning as she ascended. At the top of the cliffs, Emily turned to face the beach one last time. The figures had stopped at the edge of the fog, unable to follow her into the clear air. She could still hear the whispers, but they were distant, fading with the fog as it receded back into the ocean. Breathing a sigh of relief, Emily made her way back to her cottage. She knew she couldn't stay any longer. The beach, once a paradise, had become a place of nightmares. She packed her things and left, vowing never to return. As she drove away, she glanced in the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see the figures following her. But the road was clear. The beach and its dark secrets were behind her. Yet the whispers lingered in her mind, a haunting reminder of the malevolent presence that lurked in the fog, waiting for its next victim.